kind of like a Transformers film in the most up-to-date franchise that you wish would go away, but always seems to come back. Here I am again, with episode 2 of World of Stu. We had some feedback on the first episode, so I figured people were obviously interested. So let's do another show. Before we get into the crux of the second episode and what we're going to be talking about, feedback from the last show, which was obviously all about Batman in the movies, came from Matt Williams, who he asked what my opinion was of the Gotham TV show. And I have to say that I love it. Obviously, it's not the first TV show that's had Gotham feature in it. I don't know if Gotham features in Smallville, because I never watched it. But you can go back to the 60s, like we did with the Batman movies, and look at the Batman TV show. Again, campy, cartoonish, but absolutely amazing. Had some proper, serious acting heavyweights in it, that show did. Cesar Romero, gotta love a Joker with a moustache under his white paint. Victor Buono, Zsa Gabor. My pronunciation's not great, but I'm from the country, what do you expect? But Gotham, taking a look at the Batman mythos, but looking at it through the eyes of Jim Gordon, who's now become a police officer on the GCPD, and we're going to follow his path as he works his way up through to the commissioner role. And we're also being introduced to the variety of characters such as the Penguin. We've had a glimpse of the Joker, we've had the Riddler, we've got a young Catwoman. It's all told from a different way of looking at things, and I personally think it's great. It's one of my top 3 TV shows on at the moment. Flash, I also love Flash, and Bates Motel is also really good. So yeah, Gotham, love it. Thanks for the feedback, Matt. And on to today's show. Episode 2, we are going to be looking at the C word. And no, I'm not talking about that C word, so you can get your mind out of the gutters. We're actually talking about the dreaded word cancellation. Now, I don't know why, but it seems to be an American phenomenon. Obviously, I'm recording this in the UK, that leafy-esque suburb in the country's second city, Birmingham. Cancellations don't really seem to be a big deal in this country. The only sort of really famous example I can think of a TV show that was launched and had a great deal of money chucked at it and then was cancelled is a show called El Dorado, which was maybe 20 years ago, maybe not that long, 15 years ago. It was a big thing on the BBC, and it was atrocious. It was so bad that it got pulled. Other than that, shows don't really tend to get cancelled. You get the odd series, and if it's a hit, it's a hit, but there's not a big deal about the ratings in this country like there is in America. Now, I don't claim to understand how the American TV system works and all your different networks and all the rest of it, but the dreaded cancellation word we are going to look at. I mean, there are many shows that get cancelled. Honourable mentions or go to Firefly, Freaks and Geeks, Lie to Me, which although that had 3 seasons, I still think it was cancelled too early. Carnival, which had 2 seasons, was cancelled too early, and Alcatraz, which was cancelled after 1 season with a massive cliffhanger at the end. Those are some honourable mentions. We could go into depth of all those shows, but I am going to look at 4 shows in particular that I've picked out that I personally feel were cancelled well before their time and should have been given more airtime, more of a chance, shall we say, to prove themselves. So the first of those shows is Jericho, which was on the TV airwaves between 2006 and 2008. It's about a little town called Jericho and how the inhabitants of it react and deal with a situation, a post-apocalyptic situation, following a nuclear attack on the United States of America. It had a 1 season and then was cancelled because of the ratings. The fans were up in arms. They said, we want more, so they were given a second, shorter 7-episode season, which they didn't use to tie up any of the loose ends. They actually left it on a huge, massive cliffhanger, which was that the nuclear attack hadn't come from an enemy of America from outside a different country, such as Russia or somewhere in the Middle East. It actually come from elements within inside the American government, and they were the ones responsible for the nuclear attack, and that they wanted to bring forth a second American Civil War. Bum, bum, bum! Cliffhanger ending, and it was cancelled again. We have had a third season and a fourth season in the form of comic books, which continue to tell the tale, but it's not the same, is it? Because how many people are actually going to go and pick up a comic book now? If actual true fans of Jericho, they will go out and they will pick up the comic books because they're that kind of people. But it's the general sort of layman, the everyday fan who's never going to read a comic book in their life, that is never going to get the resolution to that show that they deserve. So Jericho is number 1. Number 2 on the 4 shows that I've picked out that got cancelled far too early. And this one is my personal favourite on this list of 4, and is the show that was the first one that I really got into as it was airing live, and I was absolutely gutted when it was cancelled, and that show is Flash Forward, which had 1 season in 2009. Now, for those of you who don't know, Flash Forward was about a mysterious event which caused most of the world's population to black out for 2 minutes and 17 seconds. During that blackout, everyone had visions of what they were doing in their lives 6 months in the future. It was a big mystery. What happened? What caused the blackout? Can they change the future, or are they preordained that they will arrive at that point 6 months in the future? That was the crux of the show. It started off slow, got better as the season went on. Unfortunately, by the time the season rolled on, it had already dropped in the ratings and was losing viewers. But the detectives that were investigating it, we got to the end of the season and there was another huge blackout. This time, everyone flashed forward and saw their lives 20 years in the future. So we got to see what some of the characters were doing 20 years in the future, and it left with a massive cliffhanger of bum, bum, bum. And I am going to do that for every single show. This is what's going to happen 20 years in the future. How do we get there? We're never going to find out, because it was cancelled. And that slap is me face palming, and I actually did just face palm myself, and it hurt. That is how much I am willing to give of myself for this cause. So on to show number 3, and this one is a bit of a grey area because it was kind of cancelled, and kind of maybe you get the feeling that it was left in a way that the creators wanted it to be left. The creator being David Lynch, the show being Twin Peaks, which aired between 1990 and 1991. Now, Twin Peaks was seemingly started off as, sort of basic, generic, whodunit thriller about the murder of a young girl by the name of Laura Palmer. It pretty quickly became obvious that all was not as it seemed, and the town was decidedly strange. You had the likes of log ladies and backward talking dwarfs featured heavily. It received a pilot episode which people loved, and then there was a 7 episode season 1. After that, they made a full-length second season. Unfortunately, because of the lower ratings during that second season, ABC, which was the network that was airing it, forced the creators of the show and the writers to reveal who the actual killer was halfway through season 2, which I don't believe was the original plan. I think it was going to be sort of like a big reveal towards the end of the season. It finished with the lead detective, Dale Cooper, played by Carl McLaughlin, who at the moment is absolutely chewing the scenery in Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But it finished with him looking in a mirror and realising that he has been possessed by the evil spirit of Bob, who previously had inhabited the body of Laura Palmer's dad, and it was Laura Palmer's dad who was the killer. Spoilers! Sorry if you listen to that and you've never seen Twin Peaks and you now want to. I guess I'll post on the comments below that there are spoilers in this, so beware. Apparently, there's going to be a new Twin Peaks series, a 9-episode series, which has been written by David Lynch, which gives you some good feelings. Unfortunately, he has left the show and he's not actually making it himself due to budget constraints. That does not fill me with a great deal of optimism for what is to come, because frankly, without Lynch on board, It's not going to be the same. It's not going to work. Is it going to be any good? Probably not, if I'm being honest. But it's what we're going to get, and we're going to talk about a couple of other shows shortly that are also coming back that really shouldn't be. But Twin Peaks is coming back. Oh, and after the second season, with the cliffhanger, they tried to tie up all the loose ends with a film called Fire Walk With Me. Didn't really work for me. Should have had a third season of the show, which apparently now we are getting, but that's by the by. The fourth and final show of the four that I picked that I wanted to have a quick chat about was the Sarah Connor Chronicles. This ran for 2 seasons between 2008 and 2009. It was a direct spin-off of the Terminator 2 Judgment Day movie, which of course followed on from the original Terminator, and it ignored the continuity of both Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation. So it was kind of like a Halloween situation where Halloween H20 came out. That was the 7th Halloween film, and that pretended that Halloween 4, 5 and 6 had never happened, and it just skipped 20 years on from the events of Halloween 2. Again, if you've not watched the Halloween films, spoiler alert there, but it kind of had that vibe in that some of it didn't happen and some of it did. So basically it followed Sarah Connor and her son John. If you've watched the Terminator films, then you know all about the fact that the Terminators take over, Skynet takes over the world, creates the Terminators, they try and wipe out humanity. John Connor grows up, becomes the leader of a revolution, yada yada yada. In this show, it kind of plays around a little bit with the concepts of the franchise, because it starts off with a Terminator travelling back through time to kill John, except there's several Terminators all trying to kill John. It's kind of like, one didn't work in the films, we're going to throw as many Terminators at you as we possibly can. Again, there is a Terminator back in the 1999 with them trying to protect them, this time a young girl who utters the line, "Come with me if you want to live," although obviously she doesn't say it to Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that would just be weird. This messes with it a bit because the female Terminator then takes Sarah and John forward into the future to 2007, hoping that will protect them from the Terminators that are like marching around in the 90s trying to kill them. The first season ran for 9 of the 13 planned episodes that they had before being hit by the writer's strike, the dreaded writer's strike. Every time you hear those two words, writer's strike, you know that a TV show you love is going to get screwed. Second full season aired in 2 halves. Again, this is another thing about American television. Maybe if you're an American and you're listening to this, you can explain, why do you split TV seasons into like 2 halves or sometimes multiple parts? For instance, S.H.I.E.L.D., Arrow, Flash, Gotham, all these shows, you air them, then you have kind of like a Christmas break or something, I don't know what's going on there, and then you air the second lot. So over here in the UK, we don't have that, and it also gives us an advantage in that we can start having the first half of a series aired after you've started watching it, and then by the time we get to the end of that first part, the second part is coming out, so we're kind of up to speed with you guys over there in America. But I just never got why you split it up. But anyway, Sarah Connor Chronicles was split into 2 halves, the second season, before it got cancelled. And this again ended with a bomb. I didn't do that for Twin Peaks, I must apologise, I forgot. It ended with a cliffhanger that Kyle Reese and another Reese from the future, obviously in the first Terminator film, Kyle Reese is the guy who goes back in time to stop the Terminator from killing Sarah Connor. He comes back in the future, meets John Connor and goes, "Who are you?" Spoiler alert. He didn't know who John Connor was. Something had changed in the timeline, so John Connor is now no longer the leader of the human revolution to go back and take back the planets from the Terminators and from Skynet. That was a massive cliffhanger. Didn't get any resolution to it because the show was cancelled. So there's my 4 examples of 4 shows that were cancelled before their time. Like I said, there are plenty of others that should maybe have been given more airtime. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you can drop a comment in the bottom, in the little box underneath, and tell me about your personal show that should have got more airtime. But here is my issue. Yes, these shows get cancelled, and yes, I understand that the networks need to make money and they need to get ratings. But if you have a massive hit and it's making you money hand over fist, for instance, Big Bang Theory, right? There's a lot of ratings for that. It's making the network a lot of money. If you're pulling in a load of money from that, why can you not take the gamble and pour some of that money into and put your weight behind some of these smaller projects that don't necessarily kill it in the ratings but have their fan base, and give us the shows and the conclusions that we want and we deserve? Would that be too much to ask? If you want, I'll put it on my Christmas list. I'll be good all year and I'll ask Santa for it. But please, there must be some way of continuing these shows that we, the geeks, want to see. Geeks are ruling the world now. Obviously, I'm not sure if President Obama and newly elected David Cameron, just to prove that this is being recorded and is up to date and relevant, I'm sure they're not geeks, but the geeks shall rule the earth. So come on, networks, give us what we want. Give us some extended seasons of these shows. Stop cancelling stuff because it's irritating. On the flip side of that, I would also post the question to you, my loyal listeners, and to the networks: if you're going to cancel the good shows, why do the bad shows run seemingly forever? The prime example of this, and the one show that I could never ever wrap my head round, is Friends. How did Friends last for 10 seasons? 10 seasons of the same handful of jokes. Monica used to be fat. Okay, got it. Phoebe sings terribly and atrocious songs. Got it. Joey is a dumbass. Got it. Ross and Rachel, will they, won't they? I don't give a damn. 10 years of the same handful of jokes. Really? Another show that outstayed its welcome, because there are examples of other shows that have outstayed their welcome, would be Lost. And this is probably going to make some people roll their eyes, but Lost overstayed its welcome. 4 seasons, I think there was, of Lost. After the first 2, they should have just jacked it in, because it got so lost in its own mythology and it disappeared so far up its backside that it became a parody of itself. They didn't even bother to answer half the questions, and the cop-out ending is probably one of the worst things I've ever had to endure in my entire life. Basically, if you don't know the concept of the show, a plane crashes on an island, the survivors are there, then there's all this mythology, there's the Dharma Initiative, there's polar bears on a desert island, there's a time-travelling island, it can move around, and they get off the island, they go back to the island. There's a boy called Walt with special powers. We don't really ever understand why he's got special powers. These magic numbers. If that sounds confusing, it was confusing. And right from the get-go, people posted online saying, this is a show all about purgatory. They all died in a plane crash and the island is purgatory. And the story is all about them trying to get into heaven. The creators of the show, they denied that and said, no, that's not right. They're not dead. Then at the end, they're all dead at the end of the 4th season. Yes, they could argue that they weren't dead on the island. They were actually dead in the future. But it was basically, they got caught out and they came up with this cop-out idea of eventually when everyone died during their normal lives, their spirits had arranged to meet up in a church so they could all go to heaven together. It was one of the worst endings to a TV series ever, and I was absolutely devastated that I'd wasted 4 years of my life watching it. Now we come to probably the one thing that is going to wind people up the most when I say it, but the one show that I personally believe has overstayed its welcome, and I cannot understand why it's still on the air, is, drum roll, just not really a drum roll, but you get the idea. Remember, this is just me and my Nexus 7 and Spreaker, no special effects, is The Simpsons. The Simpsons has now been running for 26 years and it's just been renewed for 2 more, which means it will have been running for 28 years by the time it's current contract expires, and it will probably be extended then. I don't even watch The Simpsons anymore. Started off awesome. I'm not going to deny that. It was a terrific show. It was animated way of showing the American way of life, and not even just the American way of life. It was just the family way of life. Episodes like where they found the dog at the Greyhound track and then they kept it as a pet. Lisa dealing with the death of her hero, Bleeding Gums Murphy. It was a terrific show. It then started to sort of turn into a bit of a parody, and it was less about the family life. It was more about Homer Simpson getting himself into as many dumbass situations as possible. It then started to really get close to jumping the shark. Jumping the shark, watch Happy Days if you don't understand what that means. When Homer ended up in space, and Homer ended up doing this and doing that, and being in a barbershop quartet, and then it became even more of a parody of itself, and it did finally jump the shark, and now I couldn't even tell you what it's about. I get kind of an idea of the latest updates and what's happening in the show purely because I play The Simpsons Tapped Out. And every time there's a new episode, they'll like launch some new material for the game. But the thing that really winds me up the most about The Simpsons is the fact that that's been running for so long. But Futurama, the greatest animated show probably ever. Well, no, the second greatest animated show ever behind Batman the Animated Series. But Futurama has been cancelled more than once and is currently not on the air. Futurama is everything that The Simpsons isn't. The relationship between Fry and Leela, the way they developed that over the first 5 seasons was immense. It got cancelled originally in 2003 after just 4 seasons. It was then brought back as 4 feature-length films in 2008 before eventually being picked up for some more seasons by Comedy Network. It was then cancelled after its 7th season again in 2013, and at the moment it doesn't look like we're going to get it again. Futurama is just so immensely better than The Simpsons. It's a much more well-rounded show. It's a much better written show. The characters in it are more gripping, are more entertaining, and yet it only got 7 seasons, whereas The Simpsons now has 28 seasons. I don't get it. If you do, then you can hit me up with some comments underneath and tell me all about why I am so wrong and you are so right. So that is basically the end of the second episode of World of Stu. We're going to work on trying to make this better as we go along. I have discovered, you'll be pleased to know, or you may not be pleased to know, that I have found a way of making little sound bites. So now, every time something is particularly good and I love it, we are going to be able to use this.
Awesome!
Which is courtesy of my lovely daughter, Megan Ramey Grant. Now, if you know where the middle name Ramey comes from, then you're definitely in the right place listening to this show. If you don't, go and Google Sam Raimi. In fact, don't go and Google Sam Raimi. Go and Google Ted Raimi. Because Ted is the brother that I decided to name her after, although my wife will argue that it was originally Sam Raimi, but Ted Raimi is my second favourite B-movie actor. So yeah, we'll use that every time we want to talk about something that's good. So when I'm saying like Futurama is a far better show because it is
awesome,
as opposed to The Simpsons, which isn't, that's what we'll use. I haven't got any more clips yet, but we will be working on it. It's a work in progress. Hopefully you enjoyed my quick look at the dreaded C word, the cancellation. If you are an American listener and you can explain to me how the cancellation process works and why the networks split up their shows into 2 halves and all the rest of it, then please do. We'll be on Spreaker, obviously. You'll be able to comment on Facebook. Speaking of Facebook, check out my page, Stu's Reviews, which is a text version of basically this show where I discuss movies and television, and I do movie reviews, and I basically just rant and rave, because that's what you do on social media, isn't it? You rant and rave. You either post nude pictures of yourself or you rant and rave. And also check out my good buddies Pancast at pancast.co.uk for all your podcast loveliness. I'll see you next time on World of Stu Episode 3. Take it easy.